we have to fight with our music. We're dealing with, genocidal regimes, and all we have is a fucking guitar, so, that's our thing. Now, why do we do it? Is because, we personally, I can speak for myself, is that injustice has always been something that's bothered me.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Revolver Fan First podcast. I'm your host, Christina Rowett, and joining me today is the mighty Serj Tankian. Welcome.
Ooh, mighty now. I like the mighty. There's Mighty Mouse. I don't know if you're a fan of Mighty Mouse. But yeah, you are? Yeah. Oh, all right. Oh, cool. Good to be with you, Chris.
You're mighty like a mouse. It's that's anyway. We'll go. That's down. That's a whole path, and we have plenty of paths. So this show's all about your history as a fan, but I think what's interesting with you is that you were an activist before you were an artist, and that kind of was a foundational thing. You've spoken about how, the denial of the Armenian genocide that your family directly experienced was a huge part of kind of inspiring that. So my question was, who was the first person to expose you to the truth of a situation that you thought you already understood? Which is a nice, easy question to get in there.
I think my grandfather was the first one who, as we were growing up, kind of sat us down and told us our family history, and which, couldn't include the genocide because most of his family, he lost to the genocide. And so I think that was our first, from what I remember, our first time hearing about all of it. And then, of course, we learned about it through Armenian history and history books and reading and all of that stuff over time. And talking to other uncles and aunts and other Armenians and their grandparents, etc., other friends' parents. So, but the first time it was, I'm pretty sure it was my grandfather.
It's a pretty deep thing to get involved in this stuff, and things like the Last System of a Down records, like actually raising money for displaced people where you're actually putting people back in their homes. Like that's, that must feel pretty special. And coming back then to that, how does that feel to have that line from the creative out to actually change?
Well, in 2020, when we put out 2 songs with System of a Down, one of them was called Protect the Land, the other one, Genocidal Humanoids. It was particularly to raise awareness and funds for what was going on at the time. At the time, the combined forces of Azerbaijan and Turkey had attacked the autonomous region of Nagorno-Karabakh, which were pretty much an Armenian republic on its own. And it was brutal bombardment. A lot of people died. It was horrible. There were human rights atrocities committed by Azerbaijan. And for us, it was like we wanted to get the word out in the media because, a lot of mainstream press weren't reporting about it. Funny enough, similar thing is happening now, where Azerbaijan a week ago invaded sovereign Armenian territory and has killed over 200 something soldiers and a number of civilians, bombed 36 civilian cities and villages, and taken about 50 square kilometers of Armenia land. And most of the world had no idea what was going on until Nancy Pelosi from the US Congress went there last weekend and made it very clear that Azerbaijan was the aggressor, number one, so that the press actually pick up her cue, because the press were either illicitly involved in what is known as the Azerbaijani laundromat, which is basically a petro-state kleptocracy that has spent billions of dollars in the EU, mostly in the EU, as well as other countries. Not as much in the US, although there are a few congressmen that were actually caught taking Azeri, bribes to kind of look favorably upon the country. So, all of that we have to fight with our music. We're dealing with, genocidal regimes, and all we have is a fucking guitar, So, that's our thing. Now, why do we do it? Is because we personally, I can speak for myself, is that injustice has always been something that's bothered me. You know, whether it's a kid getting bullied on the playground or, you know, something way more massive, let's say, you know, and, you know, I don't like seeing animals hurt. I don't like seeing, you know, I just don't like seeing injustice, you know, whether it's human rights issue, animal rights issue, environmental rights issue. We live on this planet in a certain balance. And for us to live harmoniously and healthy and have a future, that balance must be maintained on all levels. And justice is a form of that balance. That's it.
Living life with compassion is such a big deal. You know, and I think, you know, speaking to the people out there watching this, like the Revolver the heavy audience is a particularly, I think, passionate, compassionate. I think there is a depth of emotion in the people that that, you know, love this music and love your music in particular. I think, what was it like? I mean, you're not necessarily a native metalhead. You come from a different musical school. Your bandmates were more the metalheads. How does it feel to kind of connect with that audience? Like, what's the feedback loop been like over time? Obviously, in recent years, you've branched out, but initially, I guess I'm curious. Yeah, how do you kind of see that audience? That was a complex question.
That's all right. I'll see if I can maneuver it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Your initial assessment of the diversity of a hard rock metal audience is correct. I think there's many types of people that like heavy music, and it's unfair to, you know, just kind of pigeonhole everyone who listens to heavy music in a particular, you know, form or whatever. In fact, I would say that people that listen to dark music are usually happier people. People that listen to, you know, very happy music, or people that write happy music, are usually fucking miserable. That's my experience throughout the music industry, meeting bands and artists. And
I have a saying, yeah, the heavier the music, the nicer the people. The heavier the music, the nicer.
Yeah, right. So maybe it's because music is our outlet and we exercise those demons, you know, and then we can be nice, you know, whereas the other way, I don't know. So I think you do have something there. In terms of the awareness and involvement, look, some people get into the whole political aspect. I mean, even with System of a Down, if you look at our, you know, demographics, if you will, I think there's people that are really into the issues, and some people are just into the music, and that's how music is. Like, everyone chooses what they kind of get from it, you know.
And there's plenty of musical stuff to get into it, man. There's plenty, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and it's great. I read a thing where you're talking about how Bob Marley was like a mad at activism because he got people to dance. It's like people it's like people to headbang, or like making more interesting music that's just off the, you know, it's the same kind of thing. What was the first music that really entranced you, that that just kind of whoa? Yeah.
As a child?
Yeah.
Like when I was little?
Yeah.
It would have to be some type of Armenian music. You know, there was this song that my dad used to sing that I would sing with him when I was a little kid in Lebanon before we migrated to the US. We migrated when I was 7 years old, and during the Lebanese Civil War in 1975. And there was this song that he used to sing. Years later, when he wanted to put out a record, we covered that song together. We made a video. It's called Bari Arakil. It's about a stork that returns to its homeland. It's a beautiful old Armenian song. And that's likely, you know, that's the type of music that I probably listened to first because of him. So, you know, it's a different beginning. And you're quite acute and in your research, in the sense that, you know, my you know, when I grew up as an early teen, you know, I was listening to rock. Well, let's see, as an early teen, I was listening to all sorts of stuff, you know. Probably a lot of goth and a lot of dark stuff, not necessarily total heavy rock per se,
really?
But you know, yeah.
You're a goth kid. I love that you listen to goth music. That I feel like
I wasn't a goth kid, but I definitely, you know, I mean, we're talking about 80s, right? Like early 80s. So yeah, that was from new wave to goth and everything in between at the time was what was happening, right? So and then, but my brother was an avid listener of heavy music at home. So I would be listening to music because he'd be playing, you know, vinyl and stuff all the time, and got introduced to heavy music through him. And then of course, Darren, also the guitarist in System of a Down, him and I would share music. So I'd play him some of my stuff, and he would play me mostly heavy music, but not just heavy music, because he also has incredibly diverse musical tastes. So yeah, that was a nice musical education. But my first concert ever was Iron Maiden.
Really?
Yeah, because although I wasn't necessarily the biggest heavy fan growing up, my first girlfriend was, and so I ended up at an Iron Maiden concert. Yeah,
I love that
and
so
then
much.
30 years later, you get that email. Hey
Yeah.
man, what are you doing with
Look
Bruce
what I
Dickinson?
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So,
you didn't have like a battle jacket to wear, you know, and like white Reeboks. You didn't like thrash it out by any chance, did you, Serj? I like the visual of look, it was worth asking. If we had to get the visual. Yeah. Actually, speaking of that, what was the soundtrack to you first falling in love?
Shit, I'm too old to actually answer that question. Yeah, I honestly don't remember.
Look, it's worth a shot, you know. It's, you know,
yeah.
got all these little and I've got you know, obviously it's about you being a fan. What do you turn to at times of anger, sorrow, and joy? What are like some artists you like go, this is my medicine?
I usually go reverse. So anger, sorrow, and joy. Like if I'm sorrow, I want to, you know, I want something to lighten me up, you know. If I'm angry, I don't know. Sometimes it's okay to go through it as well. Like get angry and listen to angry music because you want those emotions to be expressed and whatnot. Or you go reverse. I don't know. I'm like, you know, I'm horrible at these.
It's not like this is like information everyone has sitting in the front of their head. It's just sometimes, you know, you jump in there, you throw out a bone, you throw out a line, Serj, you know, you see what comes back.
No, I get it. I mean, I don't know, like you know, I think sometimes, like, you know, I've got an 8-year-old son, and I've been trying to introduce him to different types of music, and he listens to a lot of different types of music, which is cool. But I've been recently playing him stuff from the 80s, you know, like New Order and Alphaville and like all these bands, and not knowing if he's going to like it or not, you know, and he starts gravitating toward it and whatnot. He's a big John Williams fan and heavy metal. So he's between metal, John Williams, and 80s music right now.
So it's
which is great.
Yeah. So it's not just a lyrical thing that Rumi loves guitars that sing. He is actually a legit metalhead. He's it's coming from truth. Because Rumi loves his cars is a song off the new EP, which I loved. I thought it was great. And it's interesting you're talking about your dad playing singing songs with you and playing songs with you, and now you're doing it with your son. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. I didn't even think of that, but there you go.
The lineage continues. Yeah.
The lineage continues. Yeah.
It's
kind of yeah, go ahead.
No, you go. I'm just
not important.
I'm just rambling. Carry on. It's about you.
Likewise.
What is Rumi loves guitars that sing? Well, which guitars does he love that sing? Who do you think sings that plays guitar? And what do you and Rumi agree on?
Wait, I just got confused. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
There were a lot of questions in
there. There was a lot of things. Yeah. So if Rumi loves guitars that sing, which guitarists are they? And that's it.
He's been listening to Muse recently, as far as guitar music. And a couple of songs off the new Muse record that he's really into, but you know, all sorts of stuff. Tom Morello and Darren, obviously from System, and you know, he does like listening to guitars, but he also likes listening to orchestra. So you know, the orchestra is the big guitar. You know,
Actually, speaking of that, like, what do you think? Different styles of music, like the impact they can have, like what do you think classical music can do to people that like electronic music can't, and what can heavy music do that the other two, not that there's only three, but they're pretty predominant styles in your
heavy music? Revolution, right? Electronic music, I would say, is created for dancing. It's motion, and when it comes to classical music, I would say the most vulnerable, the most dynamic vulnerability can be best expressed through classical.
Interesting. Do you feel like you've expressed your vulnerabilities through classical music in a unique way?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. There are aspects. I mean, I've been doing a lot of film scoring, series and film scoring. I've got 3 Netflix series coming out actually with my score between November and February. 3 different series, and so like I've been doing a lot of that, and mostly it's I wouldn't say fully classical, but some are hybrid, synth classical hybrid and stuff like that, and some are ethnic hybrid classical and whatnot. But there's definitely elements of classical, always some form of strings likely. And what was the question?
Yeah, actually, you just you didn't actually answer it yet. Have you expressed your vulnerabilities in your classical?
Oh yes. No, if you listen to like I've done a symphony years ago called Orca, and last year we released, or the year before, we released a modern piano concerto called Disarming Time. If you listen to some of it, in certain parts, you can sense the intimate vulnerability musically that you can't even say in words, and if you do, they won't have that same impact. So I would say it's in there.
Yeah.
In terms of classical stuff. Yeah.
Did you get like a sense of like some sort of like muse visiting you and going, you must be an artist? Or was it a much more organic, gradual thing where you like started playing keys and started things just kind of, and then you started like oiling the channel, like, or was it
it was, you know, I wish I had that, you know, spiritual muse that came to me at a very young age, like most musicians do, and said, this is what you should be or who you want to be. It wasn't like that for me. It was a bit more treacherous of a road, of a journey. You know, my musical experience actually started with a small Casio keyboard when I was going to uni. And it was a way of just meditating away from the mess of a life that I had. You know, and trying to relax my mind. It was a meditative effort, if you will. And that led into me really, really getting into keys. And that led me into getting into writing music and, you know, singing and all of the above. So it was a gradual thing, but it wasn't until the first half of my 20s, I had graduated uni and I was working with my uncle's company in the jewelry business. And I knew that I didn't want to do that. And I almost, you know, I thought maybe I could be a lawyer because my parents were going through a lot of legal problems and I was helping them. And I had a lot of this kind of, you know, civil legal experience, if you will. And I always say I had to go to the far ends of who I didn't want to be to admit to myself who I really am. And it came like a huge revelation. It came instant, you know, like this big thing that, fuck all of this, I want to do music. It was more of that feeling rather than this beautiful muse coming to me at a young age. You know, it was more like, fuck life, fuck all, I'm doing music kind of thing.
Yeah. So, no one was playing a flute. Yeah. No forest was playing a flute and hanging out.
No.
Well, at what point did you meet the System guys around this like time, or because it's cool, you know, that whole thing, what's the thing, then the student's ready, the master appears or whatever. Maybe like you have to like
exactly. So I started writing and playing by myself, obviously first, and then I played keyboards in this kind of hybrid Armenian American band for a little bit with some friends, local friends. And that was my first band experience. And then through that and rehearsal space sharing, I met Darren. Everyone else wasn't as serious about music as him and I were. So we kind of started, you know, hanging out, listening to music, writing music together. And that became the basis of our first band together called Soil before System of a Down. Yep. That lasted for 8 months. We had one show where Darren fell off stage. He's still, you know, I'd say, and he still falls off stage, but he doesn't. But for a while he did. And then we formed System after that with show and yeah.
Where are you guys at now? Because that's a long ass relationship.
Yeah.
How many years
I mean,
is that? Is it mental? Is it like, yeah?
well, we formed System of a Down in '93, but I knew Darren, you know, many years before then, I guess. So I met him early '90s.
30
Yeah,
years,
30
man.
years.
30 years.
Yeah,
Look, I'm not
really.
speaking on behalf of the fans, but I kind of feel like this is a good time to do something. I'm just saying that this is a big number. I'm just putting it out there. It's your call. But
Right.
that's crazy that you've survived that.
Yeah.
Well, you know, in whatever form, in, you know, you've done an amazing amount of stuff.
Yeah. I think, I mean, you know, we haven't put 100 records out. We've put out 5 records, but is it 5?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
And these 2 songs that we put out, you know, last year or the year before, you know, but it is what it is, you know. Yeah, we've been together for a long time, and we're all really close in the sense of like we all still respect each other and love each other, even if we disagree about stuff, which is fine, and that happens in any, you know,
Marriage.
family, friendship, business, you name it. Yeah, you know, band. And so that's what's really cool about our whole relationship, all 4 of us.
If it comes, yeah, I guess, well, if a humanitarian effort needs that, I'm sure you'll show up. If the humanitarian effort needs new system, you know, I'm sure you'll show up.
We're trying to do a few things, and we'll see what happens if something transpires, but we're always trying to do something.
Yeah, it's important. So the new record, which is coming out on October 21st, Perplex Cities, I think if it was a meal, it would encompass many powerful food groups. Like, it's a lot of different, your sonic palette is pretty broad. There's, you know, there's electronic music, there's these kind of guitars. I don't know the name for everything, but I felt like new neural pathways were being carved, which is how I like to do my music. First of all, this is kind of silly, but it's called Perplex Cities. Has a city ever perplexed you? Have you ever toured a city and been perplexed by it? I have to ask.
I love naming albums words that people have a hard time pronouncing properly. I'm an anti-marketer. I'm an inverse marketer. Have I been to cities that perplex me? Absolutely. Venice, Italy fucking perplexed me. Like, I was like, I couldn't find my way around even with GPS. I mean, there are a number of perplexing cities, but I think, you know, without really getting into details, cities themselves are not just perplexed, they're complex, and they make us feel, they make us kind of lose our individualism at one point, you know. I feel like country living is always more natural and healthy, you know. A city living is like, you know, top of each other. So, you know, it's a statement on that, but it's also many other things. And the music itself, you know, it's quite interesting because the track "The Race," which is the second track on the EP, I had written that a while ago, and that became a blueprint for me to go, you know, because, you know, you write a lot of different types of music, from classical to rock to everything in between. And I, you know, the other day, I you know, for the last month, I've been compiling demos of old vocal music that I have. Like, you know, I have thousands of tracks, but demos of old vocal music. And I started doing rough mixes. I ended up with like 95 songs of vocals, from like weird goth stuff to acoustic stuff to like weird rock shit and all sorts of stuff. And, you know, I just wanted to kind of just have a rough, you know, mix of a lot of vocal music that I had so I could listen to it. And so these songs, when I wrote that song, "The Race," it was done in such a different way than anything I've ever written. It was more like writing a song as a composer rather than as a songwriter, because it's very layered. It builds in specific kind of ways, but also electronic, you know, and like these delayed sounds. It has a very kind of dark, kind of depressing, you know, vocal line, and delayed, and again, different from what I would have done. It's like kind of Depeche Mode, Radioheady mix, fucked up shit, like
You can't go
thrown in a
wrong.
blender.
You can't go
Yeah,
wrong.
you can't go wrong. But that kind of like just taste, that kind of aura, you know.
Yeah.
And after writing that song, I thought to myself, oh wow, I should do more of these, because there's something really unique and different about this, you know. And so some of these songs evolved through that, or other experiences. I almost curated it in a way where one is like this really deep worldy kind of vibe, and one is kind of a little bluesy to give it a little different flavor. So it's not all electro rock kind of thing, but they just dance well together, these songs.
Yeah, they dance well together. I like that.
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah.
history with electronic music? Like, have you ever been to a rave? What's your history with electronic? Have you ever been to a rave?
Yeah, multiple ones. Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
that like?
Love
the thought.
Well, multiple ones. I mean, they've been really fun.
Yeah.
The ones that I'd gone to, and just danced all night and lose yourself in the moment, and kind of, you know, not have a care in the world, and be able to enjoy that. It was many years ago. But yeah, they were fun. They were fun. But to me, dance music's always been there. I mean, when, you know, in the 70s, it was disco, you know, and it just continues and evolves, you know. They call it something else every fucking year. But it's dance music, really.
It's interesting it got gentrified. Like, electronic music used to be very much from like the queer community and the Latin community and the Black community, and then it kind of got like house music got so white. Like, it's stolen Black music as much as like rock and roll. It's kind of a funny thing, but I like it's an interesting foray you make into that. Like, I think it's good to have a whole palette. I was thinking, like, are there any activist electronic music artists? I don't know whether you know any, but I was like, I can't think of any off the top of my head. Like, KLF were more like activists against the industry and like burning £1 million and bringing a machine gun to the award ceremonies and putting a pig in the thing. That's not activism. That's kind of just being a dick, like making a statement about the music industry. That's not quite the same as actually caring about a cause.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't really thought about it. I
don't think it's.
I'm sure there are.
It probably is. So if Perplex, was a film.
I mean, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. You're finishing the question.
I'm just thinking out loud. Maybe there's an industrial electro kind of outfit that, you know, Atari Teenage Riot, maybe. Like, I don't know. I don't remember.
Dude, that's totally accurate. They came out. They came out here, I think, the same year as Toxicity came out.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
cool.
So that's a random like little, and they got in trouble too, but they got in trouble for trying to open the door on a plane rather than having provocative lyrics. It's a different thing. Different thing. Yeah, a little bit different. What did you when you were writing, like, just okay, we'll come back to the new album, but when you were writing like that album, did you have a sense that everything was about to change? Because I feel like that, like September 11, I mean, it came out a week before. I feel like for me, my experience of the world, the entire energy of the world shifted after that to this cult of fear. Like, something happened in us collectively that was quite profound. That's just my experience. I don't know if that was how anyone else felt, but yeah.
I'm not sure any of us had a premonition of how things would have changed while we were recording the record, but I can tell you that first week of release, which coincided with September 11, 2001, was the most like crazy stressful time probably of our lives as a band. So, you know, my favorite question is, Toxicity is your biggest record. How did it feel when you released it? I'm like, horrible. My answer, horrible.
You have to go explain it to how it's done.
You know, it was like worst experience ever. You know, like, I remember when we released it, I had written a statement called Understanding Oil, which is still available online, which was a response to understanding the kind of, you know, the terrorist attacks that had transpired against the World Trade Center in New York and all of that. And, you know, the contribution of 50 years of American foreign policy to some of that stuff going on, just trying to understand all of it. as an American, as you know, because we were all in, you know, in this weird disbelief matched with fear and, you know, daily like announcements of further terrorist attacks. Meanwhile, we're on tour, which is horrible because at that point, you know, first of all, there's the, you know, code red, code orange of terrorist attacks against large, you know, congregations basically. And we were in front of, I don't know, 10, 20,000 people a night. And then there were the people that were calling me traitor because of my statements. So there was that threat multiplied by the other threat, all while we're on tour. So it was, you know, it was interesting times. Interesting.
That's pretty wild to actually put something out in the world that has that kind of level of reaction, you know, like, you know, it's a pretty significant thing to be a part of the culture and in that level where you're actually, yeah, I mean, not to say that all connection and response is good connection, because that's not true. But, you know, those songs hold a special place in a lot of people's hearts. Like, do you ever think it's nuts? You've literally made songs that people have been listening to for 20 years and have gotten them through hard times. Like, is that a spin out ever? Like, you know, like what's a song that people like come to you about and say, this is my...
People scare the shit out of me and they yell, wake up behind me, like somewhere in wherever in public, wake up. I'm like, fuck, dude. Like, really? Like, wow. You know, I'm glad you're excited, but don't do that. You know, like I get that a lot. But you know, it is very intriguing. It's the biggest compliment in the world to start with, that anyone would listen to your music. And to me, the best thing to see is multi-generational kind of listeners, like a father with a son, you know, or a grandfather with a father, which is happening as we get older, you know, and just seeing that is so fucking beautiful. It's so beautiful.
How nuts. Yeah.
And it's the biggest compliment. But yeah, I think it's amazing that we've kind of been able to sneak into that world of, you know, because generally memorable songs like Beatles songs are very much poppy type of music. And for us to have that kind of memorable transmission or penetration through people's psyche for this many decades, I think is incredible.
Well, yeah, I'm totally like 14 again when I hear that stuff. I'm 14 with like my metal dude band, you know, my metal band dude friends, and you know, it's beautiful to take people back to that, and it's a beautiful thing. Okay, so we do a series on Revolver, which is what would be the song that you would play to someone who was not familiar with System of a Down? What would be the gateway drug song that you would play to them to introduce them to the band?
Wow.
Yeah, it's a cool question. Ronan comes up with good
Probably off Toxicity, I guess. Because if we play something from the first record, which is grindier and, you know, not grindy, whatever it's called, like heavier and more raw, I guess, you know, because if you want to take 5 records and find some type of weighted average, it's going to probably end up on Toxicity.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, I don't know.
Weighted average.
Weighted average. I'm a professor.
Yeah, dude. Let's get mad. Let's get mad cerebral on this.
Yeah. Totally cerebral.
What would you if System was a person at a party? How would you introduce them? Yeah, hi, this is System.
That crazy guy wearing a lampshade on his head that no one's talking to.
That's an important no, like yeah, the silliness, like you've talked about Mike Patton before as a fellow person who has a seriousness and emotional depth and a silliness.
Absolutely.
I think
he's a great guy, good friend of mine.
Yeah, how did you discover him, and like what struck you? Like where were you at, like in your were you in the band? Were you before then? When was your Mike Patton moment?
It must have been before then, and with Faith No More, probably the first Faith No More record with Patton on it is when I would have discovered him. So I got to look at that date, early 90s, I presume, somewhere. So and I liked the way that he he's a great singer, but he doesn't consider himself a singer. He considers himself an instrumentalist with the voice, and that's what I've always loved about Patton. And because he sees beyond beyond the role of what that might be, as a singer, although he is a great singer, So to me, that's what was always amazing about him. Yeah.
Who do you think has been like, we haven't quite gotten to the point where we're, I think we're only just getting to the point where like the 2000s in heavy metal have been we're kind of starting to talk about the history of it and stuff, rather than, everyone talks about the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and we're only just getting to your era. Who do you think were like some of the significant people, like your peers, to kind of start this music? Who do you think have been the significant players and voices in not to say, like a part of the musical world that was coming up when you were coming up?
Tool, Rage Against the Machine, Korn, Deftones, like those, combination of bands, pretty much all from, Los Angeles area, were kind of like the heavy hitters of our peers coming up at that time. There were a bunch of bands, obviously, that, that we've played with, but, so and it's going to be interesting because there's going to be a chance to revisit all of that next year, and that'll be an announcement for a later time. But that it is those are some of the bands that really kind of changed the sound, the scene, and what was going on when we were coming up.
I'm pretty excited at something's being revisited with these bands. I just like to say to everyone, that's happening.
I'm not saying with these particular bands, but I'm not saying anything.
Not saying anything. Nothing happened just then. It's really interesting. LA was such a melting pot, it is a melting pot of cultures, but it produced so much in this style. What was in the water? It's like one of those things. It's like London punk rock, or, like New York hardcore, or, it's one of those. It was a really important place for heavy music. What do you think why that was?
I don't know. But, before that, it was grunge out of Seattle, as far as rock. LA followed the grunge out of Seattle with what is known as new metal, which applies and doesn't apply in many cases to most of these bands. But, there was the whole hip hop rock thing, and so that wasn't specifically just LA, obviously, but that was a part of it as well, with Limp Bizkit and, like some of these bands. But I don't know why LA followed Seattle in terms of a scene. No idea. It's
one of those things. How would you define new metal?
New metal would probably be, if I was to find a particular definition for it, it would be low bassy, slow tempo, dark metal music that transpired, that came out of LA in that early.
Yeah, that's accurate. That's an accurate historian's example. Okay, what do you put on it? What do you put on to listen to in the morning?
Either podcasts or I listen to like really cool modern classical music.
Yep.
When I'm stretching and doing some exercises. Once in a while, a song per se with vocals, but generally I avoid vocals, especially when I'm working out or stretching and stuff like that. I like listening to I listen to a lot more composers than anything else, like film composers, Johan Johansson and Max Richter and I just love listening to composers, especially in the mornings.
When did you know you progressed from being a songwriter to a composer? What defines like the shift?
It was more something I wanted to do rather than knowing a progression was happening. The opening of the door happened in 2009 when I did a live show with an orchestra for the first time in my life in Auckland, New Zealand, with the New Zealand Philharmonia Orchestra. And for them, I had rearranged all of my music for my first solo record, Elected Dead, with an orchestra, you know, and not the Metallica style where the band is playing and an orchestra is playing. No, just orchestra with an acoustic guitar and piano, all acoustic elements. And so that experience really, really changed me. And I had co-composed it with an amazing composer friend of mine from New Zealand, John Psathas, who I've worked with many times over, and we're very good friends. So that experience opened the door for classical music for me. And then I started utilizing classical music and classical compositions as elements of my music, elements of my recording, and then got more and more into composing for orchestra. And then I've done, 24 or 26 orchestral shows with different orchestras around the world. I've written a symphony and all these scores and that are tabulated. And now I've got like a full classical repertoire.
It's pretty mental that how organically that started. Like you just started going down.
What I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's what you want, as an artist. Like for me, an artist is someone that has to be always doing something new and interesting, because if you want to recreate rock songs for the rest of your life, that's fine if that's what you want to do, and that's cool. But for me, it's like, I have to do something different. I can't do the same thing, because repetition in art is redundancy, and redundancy is death of creativity. So to me, is like you have to do something different, and it's not that I have to do it, that I feel I have to do it. It's more like, it's kind of like you climb that one hill and then you see another, and you're like, I could stay on this hill or just go to the ones near me, or I could go to that hill that looks totally different.
What's good? What's over here? It's what if time, money, space, all of the continuums. If there was no limitations, what would your next creative project look like?
There are no limitations.
Oh, cool. Sick. What a cool world you exist in. What a cool world.
I love it. I love it. I mean, for example, a number of months ago, I was listening to some music I had done with operatic vocals in it, and not mine, but just sampled phrases that I've used with music, and some I've released through soundtracks and stuff. And I realized that I have so many of these type of really beautiful, slow, orchestral, operatic things that I go, fuck, I think I have a new project in mind. So I'm going to be doing, I think this is my first announcement probably, I'm going to be doing a live show at a theater in Los Angeles called the Soraya, which I've worked with before. And we're going to be doing a live concert called Invocations, with soloist singers, a tenor, an alto, a world singer, a death metal singer, and myself, a couple of ethnic instruments, full orchestra, and full choir. So I've been writing for that for April of 2023, and we'll be streaming that worldwide. There is no, I am lucky. I'm writing a book, I've got this book deal and I'm writing a book because I thought I wanted to do it, So whatever I think of, I'm doing 3 exhibitions in the next 3 months, art exhibitions. I'm lucky I get to do whatever I want, but I go after what I want. I don't wait for people to come to me. I'm like, oh, I really like that gallery. I'm going to DM them and see if they're interested or whatever, and they might not be or whatever, but I'm lucky to be able to continue to do what I love to do in whatever form I like to do my art, because I'm not, I'm not repeating myself. I don't want to repeat myself, and it's kind of like, it just comes to me. The projects just come to me. And I get excited about them. When I get excited about them, I create better. When I create better, it turns into a better quality, artistic experience.
The gut feel don't lie. The gut feeling don't lie. That's, you can't argue with that. Do you have to go? How much longer do I have? Do you have to?
No, I've got another 10 minutes.
Yeah. Now the pressure's on. What's your favorite Rumi quote?
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
I don't memorize quotes.
Oh, yeah, you don't. This is,
there's so
I'm
many of
treating
them.
this like school. I'm treating this like school. It's like,
yeah.
that's
There are so many good ones from the book with Hafiz, not Hafiz, Rumi and Shabs from Tabriz. Amazing quotes from that book. There's an incredible Turkish writer named Elif Shafak who's written a book about Rumi and the experience, the friendship with Rumi and Shabs of Tabriz. So that's a good one for quotes. There's so many of them. I mean, he's like the most well-known love poet around the world,
Yeah.
And my wife and I both would read his poetry and and decided to name our son after him. But we never thought that our son would be this energetic punk rock kid with the most peaceful fucking name in the world that we'd have to yell, Rumi. It's not something you would ever, as a parent, contemplate ahead of time, Like
they come out the box. They come out the box where they come out the box, right? Like
yeah. You can, yeah, it is. It's very interesting. Yeah,
it's fascinating, like seeing how formed people are. So with the book, are you writing a memoir? Because I have to say I looked for one, and I can't read rock biographies or autobiographies recreationally anymore because I've read them in very short amounts of time before interviews. I would have liked to have a memoir to read. That would have been great. So
anything that's work doesn't become a good fun activity.
Yes.
But,
I enjoyed them.
By the way, I'm reading Mark Flanagan's one, and it's fucking incredible. Have you read that one?
I've heard that. Like I'm reading Bourdain, 100 people who knew him. 100 people who knew him, like telling the story of him, and which is it's really well done, that narrative. But what's it like writing a book? Is a big deal.
I actually, I took him to Armenia, right? I knew him.
I've seen that episode.
Actually, CNN Unknown. It was one of his last episodes, unfortunately, and we were together in Armenia, going to different places. He was an incredible person, but anyway, that's not your question.
Look, I'm interested, dude. It's not, my questions are irrelevant. They're creating free space. They're creating a free space. Whatever happens, Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So Tony was. What I loved about him was that he was honest, incredibly honest, and what I loved about him is he was always trying to get to the truth of where he was going to, rather than just the facade of just food or colors or cultural, which is important, but he was trying to get to what makes these people tick. Why are they so different? What is so unique here? Who fucked them up colonially or whatever, like it was like he was really into that. And that's what I really loved about him. He had this yearning for truth. And when he made the episode, before the episode launched, he got on CNN with what's his name?
Anderson
the
Cooper.
White-haired dude.
Anderson Cooper.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. I don't watch much TV. No. And over beers, he was talking about how weird it is and how messed up it is that the United States at the time hadn't properly recognized the Armenian genocide. And he was just talking about that on CNN, and I was like just blown away by his, just yearning for truth and justice. And that's what I love about him. And I miss him. He's my greatest hero by above all else. Like, I think what he did in terms of interviewing people in this way that he's completely him and completely invisible at the exact same time. Like, it's completely about them, but it's completely coming from a real place, and I think you see like the connection he had with people like you, with Josh Homme, with Iggy Pop. There's something like, you guys are seeking truth as well. I think it's undeniable that that's the case. And he was a real rocker, man. Like,
dude, totally straight up.
More rock and roll than I will ever be.
Like, those chefs, man. Those chefs with swashbuckling pirates. Swashbuckling pirates. They got way more girls than any of you guys did. Like, it was
100%. going back to the book, it is a form of a memoir, but I was originally disinterested in writing a memoir. I was more interested in writing about the intersection of justice and spirituality, which has been in my head for many years.
Wow.
And when I had an agent approach me, it was kind of like they were interested in the memoir. I was interested in this story, and we agreed to make it a hybrid. So it's if you will, a philosophical memoir. So it's going to be a little different from your typical memoir in that sense. Yeah.
I've not actually heard you talk about your spiritual leanings and stuff. Like what do you believe in terms of
when people ask me what my religion is, my first response is always go ask the tree outside.
Yeah.
Nature. It's the same.
You've said I want to get on the world. I hope the world gets on a better trajectory because it's not looking good, but I'm hopeful that it'll get better. What do you think needs to crumble and what needs to grow for us to get there? Maybe that's a good last question. Close to it. Yeah.
What needs to crumble is profits over people, and what needs to enhance is empathy.
Yep, it's true. That's quite beautiful, really. Yeah. let's
less words the better.
let's yeah, dude, I wish I said, that the power of brevity is real. I think it's been really wonderful to get a bit of a sense of your artistic universe.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Great to see you.
Artistic universe, and good luck with the new album and stuff, and I look forward to all of your new adventures. Like it's gonna be where will he go next? We don't know, and that's why it's great. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for watching. This is Revolver Fan First Podcast. This is Serj Tankian. He has a new record out on October 21st, which is exciting. Yay.